Hello, I'm Kathy Bissell. Welcome to the Golf Show 2.0. Today we have someone who knows a great deal about golf, probably more than almost anybody in the sport. Gary, why don't you do the introduction for us?
Oh, you weren't talking about me?
No.
Oh, no, we got a great guest today. Legendary Ted Bishop, past president of the PGA of America. He's been a writer just like us. He's contributed things to Morning Read, and he's a golf course owner, operator. The Legends Golf Club in Franklin, Indiana. I think you're doing some coaching too, some high school kids. You can tell us about that, Ted. But Ted Bishop's seen it all at every level of golf, and now he's here.
Well, Kathy and Gary, I'm looking forward to being with you, and certainly it's been an eventful week for golf here in the past few days.
Yeah, you've got. Don't you have some? You've got some high school. You've got some coaching thing going on. Some tournaments. What's the story?
Yeah, I coach the Franklin High School boys and girls golf teams, and we're in the boys season in the spring, and our team was at the IHSAA State Regional yesterday. We finished sixth out of 15 teams, and unfortunately don't advance to the state championship. But we played on Monday, and our team tied a school record for score in the sectional. We shot 12 over as a team, 300. And I have no seniors. I have a grandson that's a sophomore, will be a junior. So looking forward to next year, and it's been a lot of fun coaching both the boys and the girls.
You going out with some NIL money, trying to recruit some more guys for that team?
You know what? Isn't that the truth? The IHSAA puts some pretty solid restrictions on transfers here in Indiana, so it's tough to do that, particularly in a sport like golf.
Are they still recruiting girls as heavily as they were 10 or 15 years ago? It used to be that if a girl could play halfway decent golf, she could get a scholarship because our colleges and universities were looking for girls and couldn't find them.
You know, that's a great question, Kathy. Both my girls played Division I golf. My oldest daughter played at University of Kansas, and my youngest played at Indiana University. And I'll tell you what, I have seen in both the boys and the girls game just a tremendous difference in quality of scores. And I don't know, I suppose it's the migration of junior golf over the past 2 or 3 decades that has improved the ability of players. But for example, in our girls regional here at our course last fall, girls golf in Indiana is a fall sport. The top 3 individuals from non-advancing teams move on to the state tournament, and we actually had a girl shoot 74 and not get out of the regional. Yesterday at our boys regional, it took 2 scores of under par to be able to advance as an individual to the state tournament. So junior golf is just in an incredible place, and it's far more difficult to get a scholarship, male or female, than it once was.
Well, it once was they were just scouting the country and going internationally. That's why we had so many people from Europe who came and played in our college golf system, and we still do. The young man who won the PGA Tour University deal, isn't he from Sweden?
Yeah, I believe so. And, my youngest daughter she's in her 19th season as the head women's golf coach at St. John's University in New York.
Wow.
And, I think the other thing that's certainly changing golf, particularly at the collegiate level, is the transfer portal. And that has also made it very difficult on kids that are coming out of high school to be able to find some place to play in college because, college coaches would rather have someone that's had a year or 2 of bona fide college experience to come in and play rather than take a chance on a college freshman. So you have got to be a really good player coming out of high school to right now to get much of a look from anybody at the Division I level.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, college sports are completely different now because of the portal and the NIL money. I mean, the portal especially, gosh, if you get benched for a game, the kids going into the portal, can you imagine Bobby Knight or Woody Hayes or Bo Schembechler in the portal era? They would have had some problems. You can't stockpile talent when they can just up and leave.
No, you can't. And I mean, obviously, all you have to do is look at last year's NCAA men's basketball tournament and look at a team like Kansas State that I think they only had 2 returning players, and St. John's is going to be kind of in the same situation when Pitino came in as head coach. Basically, he pretty much told everybody but 2 or 3 guys this probably isn't going to be the place that you want to play, and he'll rebuild his team through the portal. And so it's completely changed the landscape. And then I think to your point about the NIL money, you've got a lot of athletes. I'm a Purdue grad, thrilled to death that Zach Edey, the National Player of the Year, is going to come back and play basketball for the Boilermakers. But, the rumor is he's getting upwards of $1 million in NIL money. And I guess in some regards, that's been good for the college game because maybe some of these players are actually staying and graduating where they might have left if they're marginal draft players.
Yeah,
I'd like to make it clear that I'm still unattached as far as endorsements go. So any companies out there, Made, Axis One, anybody, I'm still available.
That's good. I'm sure you'll be available at the end of the week too.
Yeah, I've been available for a long time. Nothing's happened. Well, Ted, you said it when we started. It's been a crazy week with LIV and the PGA Tour. And, the PGA of America is another organization that has completely changed. They even moved to Texas since your tenure. What was your take on this whole week of LIV and the PGA Tour and where we're going?
Well, I think my initial reaction, Gary, was like everybody else's. I mean, it was really utter shock and trying to wrap your arms around exactly why this was happening and where it was going to go in the future. And certainly feeling some remorse for some of the higher profile PGA Tour players that elected to stay loyal to the tour and passed up a lot of big money to do that. And then just curious, when you look at the 360-degree turn that the commissioner had on some of the remarks that he's made about Saudis and 9/11 survivors and those types of things in the last 6 to 12 months. And now here we are. I think the other curious one, and I read a couple of articles in the last 24 hours on Jimmy Dunn and, his involvement in brokering this deal. I mean, anybody in golf knows Jimmy's background as it relates to the World Trade Center and the loss of friends and partners that he had when 9/11 took place. So even for him to be remotely involved in this is kind of a head scratcher. But, here's the other thing. If you look at probably how America felt about Japan in the mid to late 40s and how we feel about the Japanese today, historically, usually money and economics trumps morality and bad memories. So I think it's probably sooner than later that this is all going to happen with the LIV Tour DPL World Tour agreement.
Yeah, I think Rory said it best. He said these guys have billions of dollars they're going to put into golf and want to put into golf. Do you want them as enemies or do you want them as business partners? And if you look at it that way, forgetting about the morals and all that, it's a pretty easy choice. In fact, you almost have to do it.
Well,
and I think go ahead, Kathy.
Did the Saudis try to buy the PGA Tour or buy their way in before? I just wasn't aware of that. And of course, there's no reason the tour should tell us what their business is and who they're talking to. But maybe they tried and they were rebuffed.
Yeah, we don't know that. And I think what the point that Gary made that I totally agree with is, this is nothing more than a business venture for the PGA Tour. And I think the only comments that kind of turn me off in this whole situation is when the parties talk about growing the game and how bringing all this money into the sport is going to help grow the game. And as a public golf course operator in the Midwest, I don't see how this deal is going to have any impact on my play, on what's going to happen in Scotland at public golf courses in Spain, France, Japan. I'm kind of tired of hearing the rhetoric about money growing the game because it has absolutely nothing to do with that. This is just a business transaction for the PGA Tour, the DP World Tour, and obviously it allows Saudi Arabia PIF to have their foot clearly in the door of professional golf. And I think these questions have been asked as the week has gone on. Now that the PGA Tour has kind of legitimatized the Saudi Arabian PIF fund, where does it stop? I mean, is the NFL next? I mean, who knows?
Who knows? Is exactly right. The gentleman from the PIF fund, Yasser, I'm sorry, I don't know how to say his last name, and I should be smarter than that, but I have no clue. We'll all learn it. He was talking about how the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia wanted people there to learn the sports, all kinds of sports, soccer, golf, I suppose football, basketball, all kinds of things, and that they couldn't learn it if they didn't feel like they had some involvement in it, I guess was my takeaway. And he was explaining that in his interview on CNBC. He and Monahan together were being interviewed. And so I thought, well, okay, he's got some directive from one level or two levels up higher, and he's trying to do what the Crown Prince wants him to do.
Well, I think the biggest issue that this deal is going to have, and it happened yesterday in Congress, a couple of congressmen introduced legislation to basically make it really difficult on sports leagues who have this non-taxable component in their legal structure. And I think it's going to be the antitrust people have been talking about it for 2 days, and this is not a lay down necessarily that it's going to happen.
Yeah, right. I've always questioned baseball's status on that, and I wouldn't be surprised. I think you make a good point. I wouldn't be surprised if they wipe it out for all these sports. At least the PGA Tour has got a good case that it does a lot for charity. It enables a lot of fundraising. But, the other wild card that LIV has done here is it's a Ryder Cup year. Ted, you've been involved in the Ryder Cup and all the many aspects that are, difficult to handle. It looks like maybe the Americans are going to be able to use some LIV players and the Europeans aren't going to be. And if that happens, I don't think that's going to sit well. But where do you think the Ryder Cup stands in all this right now?
Yeah, I actually asked the PGA of America that question after the PGA Championship when Koepka won, and I was just trying to get a clarification on what used to be the criteria for being on a Ryder Cup team. You had to be a member of the PGA of America, and obviously when these guys gave up their PGA Tour membership, that went away. But there was a kind of a loophole in the process where there's a grace period that goes through June 30th of 2024 that still technically let any of those LIV players, American players, remain as members of the PGA of America. But in Koepka's case, he did qualify or is going to qualify for the team based on points. Yeah. And I thought the interesting thing as the Ryder Cup unfolded based on the relationship between the Tour and the PGA of America would be you figured at that point a month ago the Tour would object to somebody like Koepka being on the Ryder Cup team, and it would put the PGA of America in a tough spot. But obviously now that's all gone away. It would appear that he for certain will be on the team based on points. To your point too, Gary, about the future of the Ryder Cup, it's kind of interesting because the PGA of America owns the American side of the Ryder Cup, and now you have this new entity, Saudi Arabia PIF, the PGA Tour, and the DP World Tour that own the European side. So who knows what that's going to look like, going forward for the other side.
Yeah, Zach Johnson's done a great job of not answering questions about all this stuff, and I don't blame him at all, but he hasn't answered whether he would select somebody from LIV. I think maybe he was waiting to hear from somebody above him to tell him whether he's going to be allowed to or not. And to me, this would open the door for that for him if there was somebody, whether it's Dustin Johnson or Taylor Gooch or somebody. So I guess we'll still see. But to me, I would think, what's the your partners now? What's the big deal?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think it changed everything. And I mean, let's face it, I think it affects the American team far more than it does the European team,
Yeah.
because a lot of the European players that are part of LIV were, quite honestly, maybe players that were not going to make that European Ryder Cup team anyway, just based on where they're at in their career.
But they would have been vice captains or something like that. You know, there's a lot of value in a Sergio Garcia or an Ian Poulter, even Lee Westwood, to go in and give the old rah-rah behind the scenes and help them with strategy, because they've been through so much of that and they're so good at it. And my understanding, based on what I heard sometime in the last 2 or 3 days, is that they all gave up their membership in the DP World Tour, and because they aren't members, they cannot play in this year's Ryder Cup.
Well, that would make sense, and I just have to believe that at some point in the near future they're going to be back in the fold, and it'll be interesting to see, for example, what they do with Henrik Stenson. Well, I mean, will he be the next Ryder Cup captain, because he obviously forfeited the opportunity to be this Ryder Cup captain?
Yeah, that changes. You're absolutely right about that. I mean, there are a lot of things we just don't know yet. And, you know, Europe
are they going to keep operating LIV the way it is now for another year or 2 years? Or, you know, it seems as if LIV is now under the control of the guy who's part of running the entity, the partnership entity, which is Jay Monahan. So Greg Norman sitting there saying, "Oh, nothing's changed. We're going to keep going." It's like,
I bet it changes.
Greg, you realize Jay Monahan's now your boss. So I don't know how that's going to work out.
I know how it's going to work out.
I don't think anybody does. And I think, you know, one of the other questions that just in my mind, and I'd be curious for your perspective on it, that I had, but I thought, from, again, getting back to the business aspect of it, it made me question whether the tour felt like the current business plan that they have with these expanded events, the $20 million purses, the $25 million purse, and the Players Championship, if they had a business model that was going to sustain itself over time. And we all know about the unrest among the regular tour sites and the people that are trying to run those events based on the fields that they're attracting right now. So there are still a lot of questions that remain to be answered.
Jimmy Dunn answered some of the issues on that, not so much on the tournaments and how annoyed some of the tournaments are, because they are, let's face it. But he did answer the question about the status of the PGA Tour's finances. And he's an expert at that sort of thing. And he said that the PGA Tour was in great shape right now. So that was as of yesterday. He did an interview on, I think it was Golf Channel, that I just accidentally happened to catch part of. So I thought that was good for the tour, at least. It's better to be in a good financial position than in a bad financial position. And he was saying there.
You know, it is, but I
Go ahead.
No, I'm just going to say I'd heard from a very credible source in the media this week that the legal fees had approached $50 million on that suit up to this point in time. And I'm sure that was another thing that everybody was glad to see go away.
Yeah, both sides were getting near the point where they're going to have to open their books and disclose some of their operations. And the Saudis definitely weren't going to do that. Yeah. And the PGA Tour wasn't really too thrilled about that either. Well, let me ask you one thing about the PGA of America. You know its background. Now, since you were president, a lot of things have changed. What have you heard? Why did they up and move everything from South Florida to North Dallas in the middle of nowhere? I never really understood. I mean, I realized they could build some more golf courses, but I thought they had a pretty good setup there, but you know, I don't know the inside behind how things ran at Palm Beach Gardens, but what is your take on why that move happened? And
right. Well, that's a great question. And I think the move happened primarily because the PGA of America got a tremendous amount of money and financial incentives to move their operation to Frisco. Now, the interesting thing is I would say at this point, the PGA of America operations are somewhat convoluted. They have a lot of long-time employees who have lived in South Florida
Yeah.
that are tenured that have just absolutely refused to move to Frisco.
Yeah.
The PGA of America has also got a New York satellite office. So it's just, to me, it's just kind of a weird situation going back to the way it once was when I was there, where everybody was under one building, everybody was in one location. You knew where you had to go if you needed to talk to somebody in the membership department, the tournament department, the media relations department, and everything's just kind of messed up at the current time is the way I would say it, I guess.
And some of those courses they had in Florida originally were being built under the guise of, hey, you retired PGA pros in America, you can come down. This is your retirement course. You can come down here and play and all that. And that didn't pan out that way at all.
Well, it didn't. And the other big disappointment to me was selling Valhalla. I was, based on my turf background from Purdue, I was a liaison between the PGA of America and the Nicholas Corporation when I was vice president of the association when we did the $6 million renovation at Valhalla prior to the 2014 PGA Championship. And, the long-term planning aspect of that was that we would continue to have more PGAs there. We would have more senior PGAs, and we probably would have another Ryder Cup there.
Yeah.
And that entity was actually financially successful. The one you alluded to, Gary, in Port St. Lucie, it lost money every year. We justified it as a member benefit, which I had no problem with, as an officer or a board member of the association, because we played tournaments there. As you mentioned, we had a lot of PGA members that have second homes there. So it was what it was. But Valhalla, it was an excellent golf course. It was a great championship course. It had some tremendous PGA championships there. I mean, the Tiger Woods, Bob May battle, and then the last one when I was president with McIlroy and Phil and Fowler on that last hole. A lot of great history there. So I hated to see that happen as well. And, it's like everything else. It's all about money these days. Yeah.
Well, there's also a story last year that I think Golf Digest wrote about the Club Pro crisis. They've got an issue with the PGA. I mean, in the past, there's 29,000 approximately club pros and assistants and members. And now public courses are starting to do without, and these assistant pros are underpaid and overworked, and they're having trouble filling those positions because they're not very attractive. And I asked Seth Waugh about that at the PGA Merchandise Show this year, and he goes, yeah, it's definitely a problem. Then on the other hand, they have these rules, the Omar Uresti rule, where you have to be at a green grass facility. There's all these simulator places. I don't think they're grasping that they're making it difficult for these guys to get in when the future is simulators and other things. And at the same time, they can't find people to do these jobs. So where do you get any ideas on a solution for how many club pros and assistant pros you need and how to make those jobs better and more appealing?
Well, I think certainly since COVID and the resurgence that golf has had, I would use a facility like mine. I mean, we're averaging almost 50,000 rounds a year.
Wow.
Here in Indiana in a seasonal climate. Now we have 27 holes, but you're absolutely right. I mean, it's very difficult to find people to work. And, in jobs that we typically would have paid $10 or $11 an hour for, and I'm not talking necessarily somebody who was working in the shop, but I'm talking about golf course maintenance positions, cart barn positions. These are jobs now that we have to pay $13, $14 an hour to. And we're paying our shop people the highest that we've ever paid them in the past. But there is to the PGA's credit, I mean, they've identified what they call a work-life balance, particularly with millennials and younger people that want to get into the golf business. And a lot of us who are running facilities now have tried to structure these jobs so you're not working 7 days a week. You're working an 8-hour day. You've got 2 days a week off, trying to structure it like other jobs in the workforce to attract people into the business. And that being said, it's still very much a challenge to find people to work. And we've seen a lot of business entities changed the way they operate over the years. And there's so many people working from home now in traditional businesses. And that's been one of the things that's led to the resurgence of golf, because at a public course like mine, where traditionally the tee times from say 12:30 to 4:30 in the afternoon would have been kind of dead. Well, now I see people who have worked at home, and these tee times are full because they've gotten a half a day in at home. They're coming out to play golf in the afternoon. And so, I mean, it's, if you're running a facility, like we're on the western boundary of daylight savings time here in Indiana. So I've got people teeing off at 6:30 in the morning, and my cart barn people are not getting out of here because it's not getting dark until 9:45 or 10 o'clock in the evening. They're not getting out of here until 11 o'clock at night. So, you know, a facility like mine is now open basically 18 hours a day. And today we had 372 players pre-booked. So,
oh my goodness.
I mean, it's become a very labor intensive business, and there's just a lot of stuff going on right now.
Can you believe the pandemic saved golf? I mean, it's just incredible what happened.
What it is, and what's
is
unbelievable to me is that this year, of course, we've had great weather in the Midwest. I assume you've had it, you know, where you're at. It's been dry, but I mean, we're on pace to break the rounds played record that we did during the year of COVID. I mean, it's nuts. It's just like there's just no let up whatsoever. So that part of it's good. I mean, we just did a podcast. Brian Hammonds and I do a podcast. We just did one with Joe Bedditz from the National Golf Foundation last week. And Joe and I both agree that in the 45, 50 years that we've been in the business, we've never seen the game in the condition that it's in right now.
It's funny, if I close my eyes, Ted, and just listen to you, your voice sounds so much like Lanny Watkins. You kind of look a little bit like Lanny. I mean, I feel like I'm having a conversation with Lanny again. It's funny. You just have that sound the same.
That'll be the greatest compliment anybody gives me today. Trust me.
I'll tell you what, let's wrap it up. But here's a question out of left field for both of you. We got a US Open coming up. It's at LA Country Club North, which we haven't seen a major at for a long time. Most of these guys have no history there at all. Pick a winner and give me a reason.
Oh, Kathy, I'll let you go first.
Oh, yeah, thanks.
I'll tell you what, I'll throw mine out. I'm going with Scotty Scheffler, who is so far ahead of everybody in all the.
I was trying to think of golfers even.
Stats, and his putts just aren't dropping. Not that he's doing anything wrong. I think he's been top 10 9 of his last 11 majors. So I hate to pick chalk because it's more fun to. Last year I picked Fitzpatrick. I nailed it. But I'm going with Scotty Scheffler. So that leaves it to you two now. I bought you some time.
Well, I'm just trying to think of like golfers in general, and I'm drawing a blank on even who plays golf. I think it's going to be.
I think you want to go with light horse Harry Cooper. He won the LA Open
he won
once.
before. We looked at that list. I don't think it's going to be Rory. I think it might be somebody who has, you know, another Matthew Fitzpatrick type player. Just because it's an unknown golf course, nobody's played it, so the usual names don't have an advantage. We don't know what the golf course how it's gonna play, what it looks like, where the trouble is, you know, whose game it favors. I mean, we just don't know enough about it. And so, I mean, that's what it's going to be somebody we don't think about.
Yeah, I mean, that could always happen in U.S. Open. I mean, Rory McIlroy would be my sentimental favorite. I'd love to see Rory win, and I'm going to pick a guy that's not necessarily one of my favorite players, but his record in recent majors has been impeccable, and I'm going to take Brooks Koepka.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's like, can't go wrong with him,
Mr. Major right now.
He slams the door on the other guys. It's amazing. Well, Victor Hovland would be also.
He would.
Yeah.
A good choice.
Ted, do you know what kind of turf they have?
Well, I'm going to guess in that part of California, that's a great question. It's in Southern California. They probably got a lot of varieties of Bermuda, I would guess. I have not played
Okay.
LACC.
Well, they've got that crazy Kikuyu over at
Kikuyu,
Riviera,
yep.
which is not
Exactly.
far away. And so if they've got that, then just who knows?
I
'Cause
think
that
one of
grass
the things would be interesting to watch with this U.S. Open. You know, they've restricted the number of public tickets that they sold for this championship, and I think it's like 5,000 people a day. So it's not going to look, I don't think, like a typical
Okay.
U.S. Open would.
Okay. That's interesting. Well, Gary, you know what it's time for?
It's time for the shameless plug, Ted.
Yes.
Subscribe now. It's free. Click on subscribe. You will not receive a bunch of email and robot mail. You'll just get updated when there's a new podcast out. Click on like. Our goal, once again, long term, we're trying to get enough viewers to make 17 cents. I know people say that can't be done, but they said man would never fly. And well, they were wrong about that. But
No, they were actually right, but
oh yeah, well, I stand
people
corrected.
build airplanes and we fly in them.
Yeah, I guess the Wright brothers did make it, but
Right.
click on like, click on subscribe, because where else you're going to hear from a guy, Lanny Watkins, stunt double, great Ted Bishop, past president of PGA of America. And if you're in the Midwest, get in your car and drive to Franklin, Indiana, and check out the Legends Golf Club, where Ted is the emperor and czar and rules with an iron fist. He's a benevolent emperor.
He's the reigning legend of the legends.
Yeah, I'm
Thanks,
dealing
Ted,
with
for being here.
handicap issues in my ladies' day right now.